Billionaire visits his daughter's grave, and finds a black waitress crying there with a little girl. What if the most powerful man in the city discovered that grief doesn't recognize wealth, status, or color? 42-year-old businessman James Mitchell had built an empire worth billions, but on this gray October morning, he felt smaller than the withered chrysanthemums he carried. The marble headstone read, "Chloe Mitchell, age 7, forever our angel," and beneath those carved words lay the reason his heart had stopped believing in happiness 3 years ago. As he approached his daughter's grave in the quiet corner of Riverside Cemetery, James froze. A young black woman knelt beside Chloe's headstone, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Next to her sat a little girl, maybe 6 years old, placing colorful drawings against the stone with the careful reverence of someone far too young to understand death's permanence. The woman looked up, her tear-streaked face reflecting the same raw pain that haunted James every sleepless night. In that moment, two strangers shared the language that only broken hearts can speak. "Where are you watching from tonight?" James stood motionless, unsure whether to approach or retreat. The woman noticed him first, her eyes widening with embarrassment as she quickly wiped her cheeks. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, gathering the little girl closer. "We didn't mean to intrude. Mia just wanted to leave these for the angel." The child held up a crayon drawing of two stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "Mama said the angel girl might be lonely," Mia explained with the innocent wisdom of childhood. "So I drew us being friends." James felt something shift in his chest, a crack in the wall he'd built around his grief. "It's okay," he managed, his voice rougher than intended. "Chloe would have loved the company." He set his own flowers down, noticing how the woman's simple wildflower bouquet looked more vibrant than his expensive arrangement. "I'm Jasmine," the woman said quietly, still clutching her daughter's hand. "We come here sometimes when I'm working nearby. I waitress at Murphy's Diner down the street. Mia always asks about the little girl with the pretty headstone." The past 3 years flashed through James's mind. After Chloe's accident, he'd thrown himself into work, building his company into a corporate giant while his personal life crumbled. His ex-wife had moved across the country, unable to bear the memories. Most friends had drifted away, uncomfortable with his grief. The silence in his penthouse had become deafening. "I'm James," he said simply, leaving out the titles and wealth that usually defined him. Something about this moment felt sacred, stripped of pretense. Jasmine studied his expensive suit and the chauffeured car visible through the cemetery gates, but her expression remained kind. "She must have been very special," she said, reading Chloe's headstone again. "She was everything," James whispered. 7 years old, and she had more wisdom than most adults I know. She used to say that kindness was the only magic that really mattered. Mia tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mama, can we tell him about our angel prayers?" Jasmine blushed, clearly uncomfortable. "We shouldn't bother." "Please," James interrupted, surprised by his own desperation to hear more. "I'd like to know." "Well," Jasmine began hesitantly, "Mia's father passed when she was 3. Sometimes when life gets overwhelming, we come here and Mia talks to Chloe. She believes angels can hear other children better than grown-ups." The simplicity of it nearly broke him. While he'd spent years in therapy and isolation, this little girl had found a way to transform grief into connection. "What does she tell her?" Mia beamed. "I tell Chloe about my day at school, and about how Mama works really hard, and sometimes I ask her to help Mama not cry at night when she thinks I'm sleeping." The honesty hit James like a physical blow. Here was a family facing their own struggles, yet still making space for compassion toward a stranger's loss. He looked at Jasmine, really looked at her, and saw the exhaustion beneath her gentle smile, the worn edges of her clothes, the calloused hands of someone who worked tirelessly to provide. "How long have you been coming here?" he asked softly. "About 8 months, Jasmine admitted. "Ever since Mia started asking about heaven." As autumn wind scattered leaves around Chloe's grave, James realized he wasn't the only one seeking answers in this quiet place of remembrance. Over the following weeks, James found himself returning to the cemetery more often, hoping to encounter Jasmine and Mia again. When he finally did, On a crisp November afternoon, he discovered them huddled together on a small blanket, sharing what looked like a packed lunch. "Mr. James," Mia called out, waving enthusiastically. "We're having a picnic with Chloe." Jasmine looked embarrassed. Mia insisted. She said angels get hungry too. She started to pack up their modest meal. "We can go if you need private time." "Stay please," James said quickly. "I brought something too." He held up a bag from the city's finest bakery. Chloe loved chocolate croissants. "I thought maybe." He trailed off, realizing how silly it might sound. But Mia clapped her hands. "A feast. Mama, we can share." As they sat together on the blanket, James learned more about their lives. Jasmine worked double shifts to afford their small apartment, often bringing Mia to work when childcare fell through. She'd been studying nursing before her husband's unexpected heart attack derailed everything. Now she was just trying to survive, one day at a time. "What about you?" Jasmine asked gently. "Do you have other family?" James's jaw tightened. "My wife couldn't handle staying in the same city after we lost Chloe. She said everything reminded her of what we'd lost instead of what we'd shared." The old anger still burned, mixed with a grief he'd never fully processed. "That must be so lonely," Jasmine said simply. The understanding in her voice nearly undid him. "I threw myself into work. Built this empire, thinking success might fill the hole she left. But every achievement felt hollow without her there to celebrate." Mia, who'd been quietly arranging leaves in patterns, suddenly looked up. "Mama says sadness is like a heavy backpack. You have to carry it, but you don't have to carry it alone." The wisdom from such a small person left them both speechless. As weeks passed, their cemetery meetings became a routine. James began bringing better food, warmer blankets, small gifts that Mia would insist on sharing with Chloe's spirit. He discovered that Jasmine's car had broken down months ago, forcing them to walk miles to visit the cemetery. Her pride wouldn't let her accept direct help, but she couldn't refuse when James offered rides on his way to other places. During these quiet afternoons, James felt something he hadn't experienced since Chloe's death: peace. Watching Mia's innocent joy, listening to Jasmine's gentle wisdom, he began to remember. "What happened?" James asked, immediately concerned. "The diner's closing," she whispered. "Budget cuts. 3 weeks before Christmas, and I lost my job. I don't know how I'm going to tell Mia we might lose our apartment too." If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. The raw desperation in her voice awakened something fierce in James, a protective instinct he hadn't felt since Chloe died, and a realization that perhaps healing didn't mean forgetting, but rather learning to love again. James felt the familiar helplessness that had consumed him after losing Chloe, but this time it was mixed with something new, a desperate need to protect this family that had become his lifeline back to humanity. "Let me help," he said immediately. "I can make some calls." "No." Jasmine's voice was firm despite her tears. "I can't be your charity case. I won't let Mia grow up thinking we survived because someone took pity on us." Her pride stung, but James understood. He'd felt the same way when friends offered hollow condolences and empty gestures after Chloe died. "It wouldn't be charity," he said carefully. "It would be family helping family." "We barely know each other," Jasmine protested, but her voice wavered. "Don't we?" James asked softly. "You've spent months listening to my stories about Chloe. You've let Mia share her drawings and dreams. You've taught me that grief doesn't have to be a prison." He paused, gathering courage. "I know you work 2 jobs to afford Mia's asthma medication. I know she's afraid of thunder but loves rainy days because they make rainbows. I know you sing her to sleep with the same lullaby your grandmother sang to you." Jasmine stared at him, realizing how much they'd truly shared in their quiet cemetery conversations. "I also know," James continued, "that Mia wants to be a doctor like her daddy was going to be, and that you've been saving every penny to give her that chance." "That's not charity, Jasmine." That's love worth investing in. The revelation hit her hard. In all their conversations, she'd never mentioned her late husband's medical school dreams or how his death had shattered their shared vision of serving their community together. "How did you?" she whispered. "Because I listen," James said simply. "The same way you listened when I told you about Chloe's dream of opening an animal shelter. The same way you didn't judge me for admitting that I sometimes talk to her picture at night." Jasmine closed her eyes, exhaustion finally overtaking pride. "I'm scared, James. Not just about the money. I'm scared that if I stop fighting for everything myself, I'll lose who I am. After Marcus died, independence was all I had left. And after Chloe died, control was all I had left," James admitted. "But maybe what we both learned is that some things can't be controlled or fought alone." A few days later, James discovered the deeper truth behind Jasmine's desperation. While researching local nursing programs to help with her studies, he'd contacted the diner owner about severance pay. The conversation revealed something Jasmine had hidden. She'd been working extra shifts unpaid for months, covering for a coworker whose own child was sick, knowing the diner was struggling. Her selflessness had literally cost her the job. Have you ever faced something like this, where helping others put your own family at risk? Let us know in the comments. As James sat in his empty penthouse that night, staring at Chloe's photos, he realized this wasn't just about helping Jasmine and Mia anymore. It was about honoring the kind of person Chloe would have wanted him to become. The question was no longer whether he could help them, but whether he was brave enough to let them help heal him in return. James didn't wait for another cemetery meeting. The next morning, he appeared at Jasmine's apartment building, carrying breakfast and wearing jeans instead of his usual suit. When Mia opened the door, her face lit up with surprise. "Mr. James. Mama said you probably wouldn't want to see us anymore since we can't come to the cemetery as much." The innocent honesty broke his heart. "Mia, sweetheart, you and your mama have become the most important part of my week. I'd be honored if you'd let me be part of yours." Jasmine emerged from the kitchen, her eyes red from another sleepless night. "James, I told you. Hear me out," he said gently. "Not as someone with money trying to fix your problems, but as someone whose problems you've already helped fix." He knelt down to Mia's level. "Remember when you told me that Chloe probably wanted me to be happy again? That angels don't like it when the people they love stay sad forever." Mia nodded seriously. "Well, I think Chloe sent me to you and your mama for a reason. And I think your daddy sent you to me too." Jasmine's breath caught as James continued. "I've been researching nursing programs, not to fix your life, but because I want to honor what you're building. There's a scholarship program at the university, full tuition, plus living expenses for single parents. The application deadline is next week." "James, I can't." "You can," he said firmly. "Because you're not just taking help. You're giving it. I want to offer you a job." Jasmine blinked in confusion. "I'm starting a foundation in Chloe's name. Community healthcare, support for single parents, grief counseling. I need someone who understands what families like yours actually need, someone with the heart to make sure the help reaches the right people the right way." "But I'm just a waitress." "You're a woman who worked extra shifts without pay to help a coworker's sick child," James interrupted. "You're a mother who taught her daughter that angels are friends, not something to fear. You're someone who turned a stranger's grief into connection instead of avoiding him like most people did." Tears streamed down Jasmine's face. "I don't understand. Why us? Why this?" James's voice grew thick with emotion. "Because 3 months ago, I was planning to sell everything and leave the city. I couldn't see a future here without Chloe. But watching Mia talk to her, seeing you find strength in kindness instead of bitterness, you didn't just help me remember my daughter. You helped me remember the father she loved, the man I used to be." Mia suddenly hugged his leg. "Does this mean we're going to be a family like the ones in my picture books?" The adults exchanged glances, both recognizing the profound shift happening between them. Not romance born from desperation, but something deeper. Two wounded souls finding their way back to wholeness through shared purpose and genuine care. "If you'll have me," James said to both of them, "I'd like to try." If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. As Jasmine nodded through her tears, James realized that Chloe's greatest gift hadn't been her presence in his life, but her ability to guide him toward the family that would help him heal, and whom he could help in return. 6 months later, Riverside Cemetery looked different in the spring light. The same marble headstone stood in its quiet corner, but now it was surrounded by a small garden that 3 people had planted together. Jasmine, "Chloe, I passed my pediatric rotation exam yesterday," she said softly, the ritual of talking to the grave having become as natural as breathing. "Mia drew you a picture of me in scrubs, and James brought those purple tulips you supposedly loved." Mia, now 7 and thriving in her new school, added another drawing to the small collection they kept in a weatherproof box. "I told my teacher about you, Angel Chloe. She said friends can live in your heart even when you can't see them." James finished arranging the tulips and sat beside them. The sharp edges of his grief had softened into something more like gratitude. "We broke ground on the foundation's first clinic last week," he told the headstone. "Jasmine's helping design the pediatric wing. Turns out she has very strong opinions about making sure kids aren't scared when they visit the doctor." They sat in comfortable silence, 3 people who'd found their way to each other through loss and learned that healing wasn't about forgetting, but about honoring love by creating more of it. "Are you ready for the big day tomorrow?" James asked Jasmine, referring to her nursing school graduation. "Terrified," she admitted with a laugh. "But excited. Marcus would be proud, and I finally feel like I'm becoming who I was meant to be." "Mama's going to help sick kids get better," Mia announced to Chloe's grave. "And Mr. James is going to make sure their families have food and places to live while they get better. I'm going to be a doctor too, so we can all help together." James smiled at the confidence in her voice. Over the past months, watching Mia flourish with stability and support, he'd remembered what it felt like to be protective and nurturing, not from grief and fear, but from love and hope. "I have something for you both," he said, pulling out an envelope. Inside were 3 plane tickets and a resort confirmation. "I know we talked about taking a real vacation once graduation was over." Jasmine's eyes filled with happy tears. "James, this is too much." "It's exactly enough," he said firmly. "Chloe always wanted to see the ocean. I think she'd like knowing we're finally taking time to celebrate the good things instead of just surviving the hard ones." As they prepared to leave, Mia placed one last drawing against the headstone, a picture of 4 stick figures on a beach, with 2 on the sand and 2 floating above with angel wings. "See you next week, Chloe," she whispered. "Daddy says hi too." Walking back to their car as a family, James felt Chloe's presence not as absence, but as the gentle force that had guided them all toward a love large enough to include her memory while making room for new happiness. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey of hope, healing, and the beautiful way broken hearts can learn to love again.